Fig fam, how are we? No coffee, it's the afternoon, but we got to get into it. It's February, we're antsy. We want to start propagating, getting our propagations growing. We want to do seed starting. We want to do all the things. We want to prune, but let's slow down. Let's be methodical about it. Because with a fig tree, there are so many opportunities to grow more and more things, to refine your fig tree, to be prolific in the growing year. And today I want to focus on a really cool concept, and that is harvesting a sucker. So harvesting a sucker is when you have branches that stem out from the root system of the fig tree. We can dig those up and we can separate them from the tree and bring as many of their own roots with them as we can. And we can actually avoid the whole propagation process. So if you have a fig tree and you see branches coming out of the base of the tree, not associated with the main trunk or below the surface of the soil and associated with the main trunk, you may be in luck of propagating your own fig tree with little to no work at all. So let's jump into it. I got some fig trees to show you on how to remove a sucker and make a whole brand new fig tree. Ooh. Going into the greenhouse. It is a beautiful 73 degrees in this greenhouse. And I am getting my fig cuttings underway because I am way behind on doing any of my fig cuttings. I'm really dedicating a lot of time just because I've been busy with life, busy with everything. But this is your reminder that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. And the next best time is now. So I've got a whole slew of fig cuttings underway. I just ran out of rooting hormone. I have some more coming today. Fingers crossed, Amazon. But today I also want to multitask and I want to focus not just on propagating these cuttings, but propagating my in-ground trees and getting a sucker. And I really want to show you that. And as much as those clippers are good, this is a time for your small saws. This is a time for your hori knives, which is what I like to use. You can see mine right here. Acts as a shovel, a dibbler, a saw, and cutting twine as well. And maybe a beverage that has a bottle cap on it. Who knows, fig fam? But this is like the biggest win if you have an in-ground fig tree, or if you have a friend that has an in-ground fig tree and it needs some good pruning. They generally will put out suckers, and suckers are branches with that emerge from the root system at the base of the tree. And I have a Smith fig tree that I've pruned heavily because a lot of you wanted Smith cuttings and I've sent them out. Now I'm out of them, and in its heavy pruning, which Smith does not like, by the way, there is a sucker. And I'm going to show you that right now and how to remove it. Ah, the barren fig orchard and my Smith fig. All right, so here we have my fig tree. As I've been mowing the lawn and picking up leaves, I have been laying it on top of all the figs here. So I have this nice deep layer that is eventually going to break down and compost on its own. But that being said, here is my ridiculously heavily pruned Smith fig. And I have to decide if I want to isolate a main branch, if I want to keep some of these side branches, some sort of hybridization. And in the meantime, while I'm deciding which one I want to be the leader branch, I have some suckers. So I'm going to zoom you down here. We have this branch and we have this branch. Both of them came out of this bottom root system, and I think that they will both viable options for suckers to become their own fig trees. You can see this one had a little dieback. This is very common to Smith. Smith is very temperature sensitive. So bringing you guys back out, and so you can see in scale. And I like to get down low because this is my garden, man. I want you guys to be right in here with me. These have such strong possibilities to become their own fig tree if I can do this right. Because what you're going to want to do, and you're going to want to dig down deep. Oh, sorry, earthworm. It's been warm here. Everybody's waking up a little bit. Even my elderberries have broken bud. You can see I have nice dark soil here. This soil has gotten so good over the years. And then I'm doing my own mulching of my own leaves and grass clippings as well. Now I have this nice thick dark material that's full of wood material also that breaks down. And these fig trees freaking love it. And what that means is more roots for me. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you as I dig down here, the roots that are going to start appearing around these branches. And I'm going to try not to take out all these worms and bugs along the way, because the more diverse and robust the ecosystem here is, the better I know that the fig tree is thriving. Places that are barren here in my yard often have root knot nematode, and they exist in the first 7, 8, 9 inches of soil. And so if you really want to build up a good soil mix here, you know, spending the money and time, if you're in an area like I am in the southeast where you have root knot nematode and you have plants that are susceptible to it, figs are susceptible to nematodes. You're going to want to really cultivate good soil. And that's what I'm in the process of doing year after year. So in theory, and this is kind of the bigger theory of permaculture and even Jadam method of gardening, is you want to do a little bit less every year because you want the system to sustain itself. I add different types of micronutrients to my soil like azomite. I use bone meal to increase phosphorus and calcium and magnesium, which fig trees love. And then I have an affiliate with Ivy Organics where I love using their fertilizer as well. So all of these things come into play to create this awesome foundation, what you have today, where I got earthworms, I got bugs, I got tons of mycorrhizae that are accommodating these roots and encouraging them to grow and take up nutrients. And as I dig down now, I am finding roots on these fig trees, and that is too cool. It's too cool because all I have to do is separate it from the main body down here, and they're not associated with these branches. They're associated on their own. In fact, all of these two are connected to their own branches, and they have their own root systems. And I'm going to dig them up, I'm going to pot them, and call it good. That's how easy suckers are. I have a Smith fig tree here with 1, 2 branches, which I could even separate if I dug down. And then I have 3 and 4, so 2 brand new Smith fig trees. Here's a really important reminder to do, is to do it in the winter when they're dormant. Doing it when they're dormant is going to ensure the least amount of stress on your fig tree, so the least amount of trauma that it needs to recover from and healing processes it needs to do because it is dormant. If you did this when they were awake and they're small enough trees, you could kill your tree, or you could just stunt any of their progress over the year. So let's go ahead and get these suckers up. I'm going to put you on my angle and I'll show you what I'm looking for and how I'm removing it. Now, all I did was remove this soil here. You can see that it's got nice organic matter in it. Now, if you can see here, just alone on this branch, and something's been attacking it, so that's not great. But below it, you see roots. And on this branch, you can see roots as well when you get down to it. And they're both kind of associated. You can see where it V's, where I'd actually buried this tree, which is pretty neat. So if you bury fig trees, they will meet the soil line with roots and spread out from there, which contributes to their creeping nature in the ficus family. And as I dig down here, I want to know if you can see this because this is really cool. I actually have deep down buried here another sucker that has been untouched and has barely even broken the surface. So you have a sucker here, and that all are sometimes breaking off of this main root ball, but stuff like this that starts to branch out from this main root system has its own roots, and you can just put that in and become its own fig tree. So look at this thing, guys. This is coming right out of the root ball, and then this has been gnawed on by some pests, so that's a little obnoxious, but it's the nature tax for you. So because it's so vulnerable here, I'm worried that I'll have to cut below this and harvest from down here. And then I have this with lots of roots that are coming up. So I want to take advantage of this. These are definitely going to have to become 2 trees, although it looks like all 1 branch down here. But I want to take as much of it as I can. Look at this earthworm. Beautiful. I feel bad I dug it up. That's nothing like a sign of great soil right there. Let's go ahead and get these up. All right, I got my clippers, I got my saw, I got my hori knife as the foundation tool for it all. So specialty foundation. Something was gnawing on this, and I don't like that. So let's get this out of here. And I can show you what I mean by that. See this? And so something may have gnawed, may have gotten damaged, whether it was a weed whacker, but I don't think anything was that low. And see that right there. And then you can see over here too. So, and the top of it was dead anyway, so we're gonna go ahead and toss that away. I wanna gather as many of the roots as possible. And at some point, I'm gonna have to decide where to draw the line, because this and this both have roots. And I think this one actually might be more viable to chop off on its own. And I have this big V of a branch. So I could use this hoary knife, but it's a really thick branch. So in the event of a thick branch, I'm going to level up a little bit. I'm going to cut right down the middle of that V. So I have this sucker with these branches coming out. You can see the primary roots. And this is really good feedback. I want you guys to take a look, because this is the essence of fig propagation. And fig trees do it on their own, which is the coolest thing. So if you look at this branch that was coming out of this base trunk branch that I sawed off, you can see the roots. They don't look great, but they're gonna do, and that's the best part. And you can see that they came out of what was an old node right at the base, and you can see where the lenticles were, and that is how that root shot out. And you have main search root, and then you have the cross roots, and these secondary and tertiary roots are the ones that are actually going to take up nutrients for you. This is just a foundational root that goes out in search of nutrients, and then when it finds it, it'll start branching out for places to collect it. And so that is a really easy way to capture a fig cutting that already has roots. Because when you're propagating, you're taking a fig cutting before it's done any ground contact, and this is how ground layering works too, and you're encouraging it to push out roots like it does here. And since it was below the soil surface, it started doing the process on its own, while also being supported by the plant itself, because it was attached to the main trunk. So it's kind of a win-win. This is ground layering in a nutshell. This is air layering. You're just bringing the dirt above. You have sap supply from the main tree, and you're encouraging it to grow its own roots. So when it's dormant, it's way easier to manage. You can take this, put it in soil, and it'll grow into a fig tree. And this is Smith. So it's an awesome fig tree, exceptionally well in the south, as long as it's protected in the wintertime. I'm actually going to leave some of this in case more roots want to come out of it, but we'll bury that up shortly. So this, in essence, is what you do with cuttings, what you do with air layers, what you do with ground layers. You just harvest a sucker, which is the tree doing it all by itself, and you have a ready-made fig cutting ready to plant that'll wake up for you in the spring. This is the easiest way by far to propagate a fig tree, because it's already been propagated. You're just taking it out of the ground from the mother tree, you're putting it in its own dirt, and you now have a new fig baby that has roots. It's still dormant, so no rush. You can actually handle colder temperatures with it. You don't need to like wake it up right away. If you are in a really cold location, I would suggest making it slightly warmer. If I'm in zone 8B, the next 10 days are gonna be, the lows are gonna be in the 40s. And it's middle of February. Now our last freeze date is April 1st. And if you're a little bit inland of the coast, some even say April 15th. But I am very comfortable for the next few months burying this back up, letting the tree heal below the soil. And when I make these cuttings too, it actually, you hit that cambium layer and you actually give a chance for more roots to emerge. The key is just to do it while it's dormant. So I see this here, I see some roots, but I want to see how deep down I can go to get as many roots as possible. And I honestly don't see a lot, and I feel bad because this is the third earthworm I've dug up in the past 5 minutes, but I found a branch that I'm going to go with. So if you see here, as I follow the trunk down, I have roots. And I have more roots, and they're on this side too. And this branch keeps going down, but now we're starting to hit the mother root system. And this is why we do this when it's dormant, because this can stress a tree if it's awake. So I want to be able to get down as far as I can here and cut across this branch, remove these roots. Now, if I only remove it here, that'll probably be okay. So this job's a little sensitive, and the hoary knife is an all-around tool. I want something a little more specific, so I'm going to use my saw that I just got. And there's nothing like getting in the dirt. I got short sleeves on. I'm loving this because I, like many of you, are very eager for spring. And if you're considering getting into fig trees, or if you have a fig tree and you want to clean it up or make more fig trees, this is a really fun process to do in the winter. It really is. So I want to be gentle with these roots because these are going to carry this tree and cutting into success. Oh my goodness. Okay. So it broke off from the main root system. They're encouraged to push out more suckers, especially during a rejuvenation prune. So if you're removing more than a third of the tree, or say more than a third of the tree died back on its own, they will just hit growth mode. And that is a very common time that you will see a lot of suckers come up. So I'm going to turn the camera more towards me. I have one, I have two. These are actually connected at one point here. But because this branch that started to come up on its own pushed out its own roots, it can now become its own tree. And then this foundational root system had a whole nother branch come out that has all these roots. I pruned this earlier in the year. This wood's still viable. That, my friends, can go into a 1 gallon pot of potting mix. This can even go into a 1 gallon pot of potting mix. I have 2 brand new fig trees that have already rooted on their own in the dirt from last year. Now the tree is dormant, and what this does, it takes attention away from these branches and focuses more nutrients onto a main branch that I want to create a leader out of to make a beautiful new fig tree. So let's go put these into some potting mix. Before we go, a lot of you may be curious on why I have 2 main branches, and that's because I still need to decide. And in reality, I'm probably going to cut off the top of this because it has these side branches here, and I can still see nodes present on this branch here. And these nodes still have the potential to put out new fig branches, and so does this. The other idea that I have here is that these are all still connected to my main trunk. And I can make a large fig tree by cutting this whole Smith tree in half. The reason it's split out in multiple directions is because I had a more mature tree that had severe dieback and I did a rejuvenation prune. Either of these branches can easily become a new fig tree. I just have to decide which one. I'm partial to this one because it's larger and taller and it's thicker, but I'm also partial to this one because it's more centrally located, where this one's branched off to the side and has easier removal process. And I can show you that here. I have these 2 branches here, and this is the original main trunk that it came from, and it actually is rotted away. But I could pull from this branch here, and I could pull from this branch here. They both have roots on all sides of it, so I'm lightly removing the soil, and light's relative. I got heavy hands, sorry guys. I'm going to get some of these weed roots out of there, but not too many, because I really just want to isolate these 2 branches. And you see this branch has roots, and this branch has roots. This one has more. So ultimately, it's going to be easiest for me to remove this branch here. Zooming in, you can see what I mean. This has roots on this side, but it's attached to the main root system. This has roots all the way around it, so it has a higher chance of success out the gate. So you know what? Let's just get it out of here. Let's have a whole nother fig tree, right? 3 Smith fig trees, are you kidding me? All right. There are roots all the way around. So I have all these branches, and I actually think I can get cuttings out of this Smith branch that I can propagate, but it's going to take some extra TLC and love. And what, I'm 2 years into Phil's figs. Despite growing figs for so long, I haven't experimented as much as I thought I was going to until the past 2 years. I already did this with my Figo Preto cuttings, and I'm definitely going to do this with this. But because I have pre-existing roots that have secondary roots, I'm going to require less energy of this to wake up. I'm going to prune it down to here with my super awesome pruners. I just sharpened and cleaned my Felco 5s. Let's bring it down a notch, shall we? My Felco 5s, 2-year-old, 1 inch thick, just sharpened. Wow, that broke really well. So there is another fig tree, guys. 3 Smith fig trees, and I see potential in these cuttings. Let's see if I can't propagate them. Why not? Why not? Because you only live once. Potential for 5 new Smith trees here. That could be 8 new Smith figs Mind you, the root system on this is very established. I'm gonna bring in this good soil. And because it's dormant, we don't have to really sweat too much about watering this tree too much. For now, I have such good soil here that I'm okay letting it heal because it's not supposed to wake up for at least another few months. But I am gonna go with this main branch. It's gonna do just fine. We're gonna get some nice scaffolding branches. We're gonna see a beautiful fig tree next year. So with the suckers I took, let's go throw them in a 1-gallon pot. All right, Fig Fam, this is like Christmas. I can't get over how fun it is. When your trees start to get established, it's so much fun. You're like, and then I get another one? And whenever you have too many, you just share the love. 1, 2, 3 1-gallon pots. I made this potty mix using my own personal compost from my compost bin. And then I added perlite, I added soil conditioner, and I added some peat and coconut coir, depending on what I had available. And I like to feel that ratio. You want it to be wet, you want it to clump, but you also want it to fall apart nicely. Now there's a little bit of a trick to something that already has roots like this. Slowly want to cover it. Slowly. Yes, there are roots that were growing in good soil, but they have to adjust anyway. Everything has to adjust to any sort of transfer. And that's why doing it in the wintertime when they're dormant is really important. You want to take your time. So what I do, and I do this on the fabric so I can sweep this up because this soil is still really good. So rather than pat it down too hard, I'm going to rinse it in. Rinsing it in will allow it to get all around the roots. If you want, it already has roots, so it can kind of feed itself. You can wrap some parafilm around the top of that where I had cut, but it has a node sticking out here, and it has nodes right at the surface here. So my only recommendation for myself on this was probably to wrap some parafilm around the top, but it's going in my nice, warm, humid greenhouse. So one cutting down. You can see that giant one that I took when I cut it down. It actually gave less of a tree for these roots to feed. And this branch is going to focus on these roots a lot until it wakes up because it's going to require a lot of energy to push out of these second-year nodes. Branch number 2. Look at those roots, guys. This is the biggest win. This is a reward to yourself if you propagated fig trees, if you have a fig tree and it's growing for you in the ground. If it starts producing suckers, it's starting to get vibrant and strong and healthy. This is a gift back to you if you want to have more fig trees to share with others to continue your gardening practice. It's a great return of investment because you're letting nature work for you. And that's a common theme I've noticed in good gardening practices. It's almost like investing. You want your money to grow for you. So you want your plants to grow for you on their own. Yeah, I have some pine needles in here. I'm not too worried about it. I just know that I let this compost cook for like 1-gallon pot. I'm gonna let that settle in. It's the only difference if you have a root-bound fig that you're up-potting. You don't necessarily need to do this watering in method. You could just kind of press it down into your soil after you've agitated the root system. If you have a fig cutting, you're generally just sticking it into the hole without removing any of the rooting hormone you've applied to it. But when you have a cutting with a subtle amount of roots, or if you have a sucker with a few amount of roots, you want to save as many roots and protect them as much as possible, and you want to ease in the soil. If any of you have rooted fig cuttings before, and you know that the medium falls apart when you're transferring it, it's kind of a similar method. I'm going to let that settle out, and I'm going to do the same thing with this last Smith tree. You want these roots not necessarily all the way at the bottom. You want some space between the bottom of this and the bottom of the pot for the roots to grow downward and then around. Because if you put them at the bottom of the pot, all living things have proprioception, spatial awareness, even trees. They'll know that they'll have a hard time growing down and may not want to grow out as much. My rule is about half of the pot to about a quarter of the pot below the surface available. Below this, right? So at half to a quarter, depending on the thickness of the cutting, depending on the quantity of roots. But you need space for it to grow downward. Look at that, guys. If you are making your own soil, look at that drain. You want it to drain nice and fast while also remaining moist. Goldilocks zone. I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit more to this. That seemed to have settled nicely. I have all this fig available for it to shoot branches out of every node here. So I'm going to be very observant to see if it just puts out a main leader out of one branch, or if it's going to set 2 or 3. Ideally, in their first year, I'm going to want that main leader, but these are so established that I might be okay if they have 2 or 3, depending on how strong the growth is this year. I'm not expecting a lot, but you never know with suckers and cuttings, even from the same tree. But I have 1, 2, 3 cuttings. I'm going to put some parafilm on this just because we want to hedge ourselves. We're going to wait for the cutting to dry before I apply it. But we have 3 new fig trees, all Smith, all a fantastic variety, all because the tree grew on its own and produced what we call in the garden world suckers. The easiest propagation method out of all the propagation methods, because it already comes with roots, it already comes with nodes, and it already comes with vigor. So cheers, let's go put these in the greenhouse. So if you guys really like this, if this is helpful for you when you're looking at fig cuttings, whether it's a neighbor's tree and he's willing to share, whether it is your own tree and you want to get into propagation, this is a great spot to get started. Reach out with questions. If you like, subscribe, let me know how I can support you in growing fruit trees, gardening, and fig trees, because fig trees are the greatest fruit tree you can own. Thank you for your time. Cheers, Fig Fam.